Welcome to the Friendly Aussie Podcast.
Welcome to the Friendly Aussie Podcast. Today I have Abhinav, a cannabis content creator that has a focus on mental health. He was a former bodybuilder. He worked in Silicon Valley. He's in the US. I wanted to get him on because a little bit of his content resonated with me, and I feel like there were some good similarities from a dude who got burnt out as an engineer to a businessman now. I figured we'd have a lot in common, so we could have a good chat and get a little bit of what's going on in the US. And welcome, Abhinav.
Hey, thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate this. Thanks for reaching out, by the way.
I just couldn't not. I just didn't see any content that was anything like what you do, really. There's a few people, but man, there's very, very, very little, I call it self-help cannabis content, you know?
That's fair. I like that. I think we were on the brink of something when I discovered this topic, because I had no idea that there was a need for it, because nobody really was talking about the downsides. Everyone only wants to talk about the good sides of weed.
Yeah.
100%. I was like,
like,
why don't we balance this out a bit? I don't hate weed, but every time I talk about this stuff, people immediately assume that, oh, he's never smoked in his life.
Yeah.
He's a fucking loser. I'm just like, well, why can't we have both conversations?
I see normally the other conversation is absolutely not at all. You need to cut it out completely. You've enjoyed it, but no more. It's like, that's the only self-help I see, other than like, how do I use weed to make me a better person? You know?
Exactly. It's like everybody, it's like the same thing, similar to alcohol, where it's like everybody is either an alcoholic or they just don't face their problem. But it's not true. There's people that can socially drink or like not drink every day and it'd be okay. Like, I don't know. There's definitely that in weed too. And I think where my gripe is really the young audience, like the super early adopters, you could say, of weed. I just feel like that's been... Yeah, because they have access to it more on the black market. You know, obviously they're not legally going and buying anything, and they don't really know what they're getting into. And that's where I felt like was like sort of the soft spot in my heart to want to talk about these things, is because I've understood over time is that a lot of young people are struggling with some of the things I struggle with as an adult. And some of it's been heightened because of their weed use, and they don't know that. Or they do, and they don't know how to fix it.
I was actually a high school teacher for about 8 months. I burnt out very quickly, and it was really interesting because I taught at a lot of like lower socio schools because I was doing supply teaching, and it's like you had kids there as young as like 13 using weed, and I'm there just kind of listening and just like hearing a 13, 15-year-old just going, I'm going to go back home and I'm going to go home after school and smoke some with the boys. And I'm just like, fuck, I wasn't doing that at 15. It just wasn't. I was a nerd. So I thought drugs were bad at 15. Meanwhile, now,
I know. I didn't. It's funny. I didn't start smoking weed till I was like 24.
Oh, okay.
Or 25.
Yep.
Yeah. I never smoked weed in college. I think I might've tried it once. I didn't feel anything. And then I even when I first tried weed a few times, I never got high. So I was like, I don't see the point in this. Like, I don't feel anything. I don't know why these people all like spending all this time trying to get high. I just go drink instead or something.
Yeah.
But I was going to tell you like about the kid thing. You said 13. The youngest person I heard from was 10, and it was through TikTok. And I was like, wait, what the fuck? Like, it blew my... Yeah, because that's where I first started talking about this, because TikTok was a new platform. And I was like, well, it's kind of a taboo topic. I don't really want to talk about this on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever. And so TikTok was new. I started talking about it and it blew up. And like we had like several videos with multiple million views and hundreds of thousands of comments. A lot of them like understanding and saying like, yo, this is so true. Like, nobody's telling me this, or no one's talking about this. Why? And a lot of them were also disagreeing with it. They're like, no, that's only you. It's like, you can see clearly that that's not just me, you know? And it's hard because these young kids can't go to their parents. Or they do, and they get shut down. So then they're like, where do I turn? And now they're talking to some stranger on the internet that's talking about like mental health and anxiety and depression and like too much weed. And they felt like they wanted to share. And I started to make a Discord group where I was like, okay, because we can't talk in the comments. It's like they're limited on like character lengths. And then a bunch of them started pouring in, like over 1,000 of them poured into the Discord. And we were just in there just hearing from people like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. Like, I want to take a break. I don't even know how I could do that. Like I can't go even a day without it. And this is like a 13, 15, 17-year-old. And you're like, wow, that's crazy that someone like that is finding help on the internet through the things that I've been able to put out, not knowing that this is of any value to anyone but me, because I was trying to genuinely help myself as well. So that's kind of the full circle of like why this became like a whole thing, because originally, I mean, I've been making content for like 10 plus years about other things and somewhat related to like health in general. But once I got into like the weed culture, I got into it really fucking deep, man. Like I think I did more in the short 5-6 years that I was in it in the Valley, because I like learned so much about how the business side of it works and everything else. And I really got a strong education behind it. And I also used it and abused it like crazy, because I could have so much access to like the best shit possible. Like all the good shit is coming out of California. And the Bay Area is where some of the best shit is grown. And you have the best of everything happening, you know? So it's like, I'm just part of it all.
You're just immersed in that culture. It's very hard, I think, to go, no, I don't want to be a part of that culture when you're living in the culture, you know?
I saw the transition between like the medical users to like legalization. I mean, it was a whole beautiful place, like in San Francisco before legalization. It was, you're walking down in the city, and every freaking block you have like a dispensary. You don't really know if it's legit or whatever. It's you go get your medical card, which by the way is so easy to get. You would go on a video conference call with a doctor. And I genuinely actually had a reason for getting the card the first time, because I was very stressed and I had neck pain from my bodybuilding days. I had some like nerve damage and shit. And so I was like stressed, and I was drinking. So I was like, I don't want to drink. And I heard a lot about, you know, weed, and I tried it a couple times, and I was like, this is pretty good. This can actually help me. So I actually legitimately went and got it for that. But obviously you're going to these recreational shops. They're trying to like give you all these deals. Every time you go, you get like a free gram, a free like dab or whatever, or a new product to try every time. And they bring you back. They give you like all these specials like every time you come in. So it's just like created this vibe. And one of these spots was like, you would go and they would make a lounge where they would have volcanoes. So you could buy your bud, you could sit and grind. Like, and I was just thinking, like, bro, this shit's about to blow up. This is a business. Like, my head was just like, how do I get a piece of this? Like, as I'm in the Valley, I'm working in tech, and everyone's like, you know, in startup world trying to like go IPO and stuff. I'm like, bro, weed is going IPO. Like, we need to get on this. How do we get in this train? So that I like really went into learning as much as I could about it, just surrounding myself with people that were like either growing or like distributing or something in the middle, you know, whether they're like supplying, you know, all the paraphernalia, or like I was trying to figure out how smoke shops run, what their business models are like and shit. It was just cool. Like it was exciting at the time.
Yeah.
But I had no idea. Yeah.
That big startup entrepreneurial phase, you know, like being there on the ground. It would have just been very interesting to see how things came and went, because, you know, I'm sure there would have been a lot of busts that, you know, the people talking.
Oh yeah, definitely. You're like, oh, that place gone now.
Yeah.
What happened there? Like that place I told you about with the volcanoes, it was gone. We were so terrified. We're like, what? This sucks.
Yeah.
All the good shit's going away. And that's what kind of started to happen is once legalization was rolling around, they really wanted a lot stricter regulations. Honestly, you can't go to a shop today and touch product, like in the sense that you cannot touch bud anymore. Like they wanted, like before there'd be places where you'd go and they would have bud in like, you know, jars of like, you know, pound jars or 2-pound jars, whatever. And you would just go there and open it up. They'll scoop you some into like a baggie and you're good to go. Now everything is packaged with seals in boxes. And 9 out of 10 times, even in California, if you go to a dispensary, you're going to a place where you're walking in and things are behind a glass or they're behind a counter. And you're dealing with, you know, a bud tender or like, you know, salesperson. And you would hope most of them, surprisingly, are not actually very good at their job. They don't even know too much about it. But I always love and appreciate when you can find like places where people really knows. Yeah, because I'm going in there, I want to talk to somebody. Like that's how it used to be before legalization, is people were going above and beyond with customer service because they knew that, you know, this is something that's it's semi-gray legal, whatever. They're trying to really hustle, and it was all cash businesses. You know, even now, like today, you can go and if you buy in cash, you tend to, you know, don't get charged like fees for like credit cards and whatnot at places like that. So they still prefer it. But my point is, like, it's very rare even now that you will ever be able to touch even like the product.
Okay.
So it's changed a whole lot.
That's actually very similar to how it is here. We only have a medicinal program, but all of our stuff comes from a pharmacy. So you go into a chemist to pick it up, and they come in like controlled tubs.
Oh, damn, that looks really lame and like very prescription.
Yeah. Have a look at this label. Like, this is our branding. You know, like,
oh my gosh, it looks like eye cream or some shit.
It's like I've got about 9 tubs on me. So this is like, you know, Alfie. This is one of the nicer packages.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
You know, there's nicer ones. We've got one brand that they do the tins where you can actually pull it open.
Yeah.
But the labeling on it's all like white, very simple. They weren't even really allowed to say what strain it is. They had to, they came up with product names. So like, for example, this is called the Baker Street, but it's actually Hindu Kush. And it's got in brackets Hindu Kush, but there was a bit of, there was a short period where they weren't wanting the strain, or what now they refer to as the cultivar. They don't want to use the word strain in the medicinal space. It's cultivar. And you had to, the companies weren't even allowed to do it. I can see why
in the medicinal space, they don't want green crack to be your medicine.
Correct, right? This one's
called... You know, smoke some green crack to fix my mental health.
It really gets me out of bed in the morning.
Dude, green crack in the morning is fucking good.
It's fucking good. I actually had a memory pop up on my Snapchat of a green crack nug I got maybe like 4 years ago. That was about this big. I remember smoking that, and it was such an intense sativa. I like laid down on my bed.
Very strong sativa.
So nuts. I love the green crack.
Yeah, it's a great one. I remember when my feeding days, I would definitely, that'd be a morning joint.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
perfect.
This is called Jasper, but the strain is Dolato. How do they get Jasper from Dolato? I have no idea, but
does it tell you like what did they give you statistics on?
They give you percentage, and that's about it. So this is an 18%. This one, this Alfie, this is a Mac 1, 22%. The Hindu Kush, I think it's a 20.
Now, what would these cost? Are these eighths, like 3.5 grams?
No, they come in. It's like 3/8. It's 10 grams.
So that's pretty good.
It's not bad, and they're about 100 and they range from 120 to 150, $60 for the 10. So you're talking about anywhere from
about 12
to 16 bucks a gram. Yeah.
That's about right. I mean, yeah. Similar here. I would say like THC is pretty low. You can get bud like that here.
We have stuff that comes up to 25 and 30. These ones are a little lower strength, but
I see.
Yeah, the doctor scripts you up. It's weird. The doctor has to script you an individual product. So he's going to give you the Hindu Kush, you know, like, because he thinks that's a good recommendation. Meanwhile, there's a good chance this doctor's never smoked weed in their fucking life.
Well, that's fucked. Yeah. Oh man, I don't like that at all, that you could only buy a specific thing, because it's such an individual effect thing, right? You really have to learn it for your own body. You know, speaking of the flower, like I think for me personally, I went through my phase of like experimenting with different strains, and like even taking notes like as to how certain things would make me feel. Like sometimes an indica would actually make me feel up, and I'd be like,
100%. You know, so indica sativa is just bullshit branding, right? Like the reality is everything is so,
but unfortunately it's become the de facto way to talk about like
it's the easiest way to explain it, right? Yeah. And I think that's valid, but I saw someone on Reddit did a really cool little you know, the political compass where it's like cross. Mm-hmm. They did one for weed for the medicinal market, and they kind of went what was that one? It was clear-headed and cloudy, right, as one axis.
Yeah.
And then the other one was sedating and energetic,
uplifting.
I guess. Uplifting, yeah. And then it's like, where does that weed plot? And I'm like, that's actually a really good way to put it, because it's like, this is really active, but I can't fucking think.
Yeah,
you know?
I think for the listener, I think the main point that we're both making is you really have to ask the right questions for why you're buying whatever weed you're buying, why you're consuming.
What's it for?
It doesn't make enough sense to just, because you're living in whatever, let's say, I'm not judging for your like legal status here, but it's like whatever situation you're in, if you're just buying things and you think it's all equal, well, that's not true. That's the furthest from the truth. And you really I think that would be one of my biggest kind of value points, if anybody can take value away from this episode, is ask yourself what you're doing it for.
Yeah.
What kind of effects are you after? And then when you go to get it, like ask those questions. Like, yo, I'm not trying to go to sleep. I'm trying to take this, like, you know, at this time of the day, you know, with some intention. And then that will help you get more educated. And you'll also learn the person you're probably getting it from, or the sources you're getting it from, if that's the right place for you to go. Because if they can't help you understand certain things, and then you can't go ahead and validate that, then bro, you got to find a new dealer or find a new shop or a new place. Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand. So everybody on the internet, like, I got the best plug and they have the best product. Everyone thinks they have the best fucking weed in the world. And it's like, no, you don't. First off, I can say that with full confidence because you don't have better weed than me, bro. I'm in California. I can throw a rock and hit a dispo. Like, you don't have better.
What about Canada? People talk about BC Bud. Nah, you think Cali's still there?
Bro, no, unless you're Drake, I might listen to you. But other than that, you're not gonna come and tell me that's some. I will tell you a story about when I was in Vancouver, and it was a beautiful, like, I was there. It was a beautiful, like, winter season, like seaplanes landing and stuff. And I ended up looking on weed maps, be like, yo, what is the weed scene out here? I had no clue, and I found dude. Call the guy. It's a Russian guy. He comes and delivers this weed to the hotel. I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. And I get it. And dude, I've never seen bud like this before. It was super different than what I'm used to in California. And it was really dark. It had like white hairs and it was like kind of like dark purple, like almost looked like black. Yeah. It's really interesting, right? And holy shit, bro, I had some of that in my Mighty and or Crafty, whatever I had on me, and I was out cold, bro. I was out. I was done. I was like, I woke up the next day. I was done. It was perfect. I spoke in the evening. I slept really well.
Probably punched with a lot of CBN.
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah, and I don't know. That was my little story on Vancouver tangent there, but. I don't know. I would say California weed is still way better, but I have to say that they have some good stuff. So respect to anywhere that has good weed. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, for fun, that, you know, going back to my point, it's like, don't just think that you're getting the best stuff from the person you're getting it from, or this place. Like, there are more options, and just please don't settle and explore. Like, there's a lot more to this shit. If you're gonna do it, like, do it right. It's kind of my thing. It's like anything you're gonna do, at least like understand about.
Put the effort in, you know. That was a big one for me. So here in Australia, like I was telling you just before we started, we had the big problems with PGRs, plant growth regulators, basically hormones that
synthetic nutrients and shit.
Yeah, it pumps up buds. So rather than the cells in the buds kind of splitting and dividing to become a bigger bud, they actually elongate, and then the synapses that actually produce the THC and the terpenes close off, so they don't get to fully develop. So you get like underdeveloped heavy buds. It looks terrible, right?
No, but I hear that.
So for me, I used to go on the Reddit R Trees, you know, and that was mostly American content. And I would see this like weed that I'm like, what the fuck is that? It's covered in crystals. What?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know? And you're blown away, and you're like, what is going on? And then, you know, a few years later, there's a bit of research, and I knew my weed wasn't right, but you'd smoke it because that was all you could find. Like, that was everywhere. The gangs kind of controlled that. And eventually I found out, and actually what I found out, I used to say I love bushweed. So in Australia, if weed's grown outdoors and it's scraggly and not well trimmed, people call it bush. Right. And I was actually like, every time I got it, I was like, fuck, this is good. Why do people rag on bush? And it's because the bush was never grown with PGRs. So there was actually good THC and everything. It was a good plant. Yeah. So I started to notice that. And then someone on the Australian Reddit actually put a full breakdown of what PGRs were. He explained it super scientifically, like explained it all. And I was like, okay, right, I get it now. So from there, I just started going, no, I got to go find some good weed. I used to drive to Nimbin, which is the hot capital of Australia. It's where all the hippies went to, and it's basically one road in the town. That's it. Like, that's the shops, and everyone else is dispersed. Lots of commune living and all that, and lots of weed comes out of there. But I used to drive down there, go to there was people that just sold openly on the streets, and I found a good hookup. I don't want to say who, just because he's still around. But I'd buy probably 2 bags, grab 2 ounces or so, and drive back. And I'd do that probably once a month because I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm not smoking crap. And then when I didn't do that, I'd grab it on the dark web. And that's where I got fucking strain. That's the part that we should talk about, is a lot of
people that are living in places where it's harder to get, they are just getting whatever's available to them. And I hate to say it, but it's like, you're better off not smoking than smoking shit, because yeah, okay, it gets you high. It's like helping you somewhat, but the damage it's doing to you is much worse.
Much worse.
It's not immediate for a lot of people. Like, they don't see it right away. You know, there's definitely balance to these plants. It is nature. People that, you know, talk about like, oh, weed is grown on the ground. Bro, the weed, 99% of your smoking is not bush weed. It's not like grown in somebody's backyard. You're smoking very like genetically modified, indoor grown, best, like only made to produce the highest yield possible. And it's not necessarily good for you. That is such an easy thing to overlook. You know, and I stress on that. It's like, you might as well buy a little bit less, spend a little bit more, and get something higher quality
100%.
than to just get something because it's convenient. You know, it really speaks to your own habit if you're having to buy a lot of weed, you know, and I'm someone that's definitely guilty of that, where I've spent, you know, thousands of dollars a year. I mean, you know, fuck judgment. People have spent, you know, they're wine connoisseurs or whatever, spend like 50 grand a year on fucking wine. You know, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars a year on weed, so it's not like that crazy in that context, but it is ridiculous. It's like,
it depends on what stage of life you're at, you know?
Yeah, but like, but at the same time, it's like, well, what is that doing for you, and why do you need that much? It's like, let's question anything to that excess. It's like, is this a business for you? Or are you like, what are you trying to do here? Why you need to get so high, you know? And that's the other thing about weed, is like, it's so easy to justify just doing it as another activity. And I think over time, for me, it became like not special anymore. It was just something I did. I'm like,
it was just part of your character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of like, it's a good idea to really check out what your character with weed is and what it is that you are getting out of it, because it is incredibly simple, or it's very easy rather, to just let it carry you away. And it has nothing to do with you being a strong-minded or a weak-minded person. It's a fucking beautiful plant. Like, it's mysterious and magical in its own ways, and it makes you feel really good. And it's very easy to get like drifted away with all that shit, you know? And I feel like you have to have some objective guardrails in place if you're going to consume weed, because I don't think it's like something like casually smoking cigarettes or even drinking. I think it's much more potent and more of a spiritual plant than that. I think it's a psychedelic, even if you say it's a milder psychedelic.
It 100% is. Once you've had a tab of acid and you smoke weed again, you're like, why am I seeing like these bright visuals?
It's like, I say it's the same. You're on the same road, just like earlier down the path, you know?
Yeah. It brings you to that higher state. You know, you're able to look at perspective outside yourself. Maybe let's call it 2 times X or 3 times X. While
magnification level.
You take acid and it's like 100 times X. It's
and that's what worried me, is that like a lot of these younger users are getting it to weed with high THC, questionable sources at a very early age, especially in a concentrated form. Most of them are using vape pens, which are easy to conceal, easy to like, you know, hide from your parents, take to school, go to the bathroom, take a puff. Like, I know all this because I hear from them. I know exactly what they're doing. They tell me, and some of them admit this like in a very shitty tone of voice, because they're like, I'm not proud of who I've become now. And it's like, you know, I always say, it's like you look behind the curtain, you found the cheat code too fast. Like, now you can't unsee what you've already seen. Some of these kids have had like depersonalization, derealization moments, or a complete like ego separating, or like feeling like their life is a movie, which, you know, as you know, it's part of it's like what these chemicals produce. It's actually the byproduct of it. And you have to have a level of understanding to kind of be able to process that. And I don't think a lot of young adults have that. And for them, it can be very devastating, because it breaks your character, it breaks your identity with real life when you haven't formed an identity long enough. Now that I'm raising a child, like, I understand that super well. It's like, you spend a lot of time like building, like when you're 14, 15, like you haven't even been speaking in full fucking sentences for like a decade. Like, what, you know what I mean?
What do you actually know?
What the fuck? Yeah. Now you've introduced a very potent, strong chemical that's going to dismember your like really small, like structured mind. You know, it's very different. So in that context, for a grown man or a grown woman to be consuming weed, and a child or like 100%. A young user, and I just feel like that distinction has to be made by people like us who are using it as adults.
Use weed. You know, we don't want to vilify it. I think one of the things, you know, you probably would have experienced this in school. when they would tell you not to do drugs, you
you fucking
say
do
no.
whatever they say.
In the US, you guys have more propaganda with that sort of stuff than we do here, but it's the like, absolutely not. There is no reason to do it. And it's like, but I'm fucking seeing it everywhere. Why are people on TV using it? Why is it's out there. Don't tell kids not to use it. Tell them why they shouldn't and why they should maybe wait. That's a really good way to ground them. But something that I think probably isn't talked about at all in the recreational cannabis space. And I think this is probably one of the most important things that people just don't know about. We all know about CBD, but we don't really know about the connection of CBD with THC. What people don't realize is before, when we used to smoke cannabis, like, hundreds of years ago, even 40 years ago, the THC was sitting at like 3-4%, right? But the CBD would actually sit about 25% of that. So CBD actually counteracts so many of the negative effects of the THC. The psychoactive effects that you're talking about, if you took double the amount of CBD that you did THC, you'd probably not feel very high. You'd feel very relaxed and at peace. But that kind of higher brain, racy thoughts probably wouldn't be there. And as prohibition existed, what did people do? They started to figure out how to make cannabis more concentrated, whether it was, cross selective breeding to make sure you got as much THC as possible, or, turning it into oils or distillate and that sort of thing, and then just removing CBD entirely. We're now sitting at this point where our cannabis has next to no CBD in it. Like,
that's right. That's a very good point. I think you're right.
It's just not the plant that it's supposed to be. Now, don't get me wrong, getting a fucking 35% strain and ripping some with the boys and having a good time, it's fucking fun.
It's great.
Like, but that's not your everyday medication, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I think you make a good point, but I think it's also the more realistic thought process is mostly what people are going to buy is going to be the really high THC weed, very filtered down, because that's what the market wants. And that's the unfortunate consequence of capitalizing on weed, is the market is going by the metric of let's produce the highest THC, because everyone in their fucking head, when they go to buy, that's what they think is what they want. And you're right. Like, I would say go as far as to label in this moment in time that weed actually makes you feel disoriented at times. It can be unpleasant at times. You're going to have feelings of anxiety and paranoia at times. And that is part of the deal with the weed we have today. Unless you're fucking growing backyard weed and you're like, exactly what's going on. But other than that, that's kind of what we've created as the sort of the evolution of our weed today. It's not to say it's not going to relax you and make you feel good and all that. It's all there. But this is the part where it's like, it also needs to be understood and talked about.
Well, you're talking about carts, right? Like, that's 100% THC distillate. Like, that's barely a fucking plant anymore. So there's a little bit of that.
But I also want to say, I don't want to demonize cartridges, because
they're fucking awesome.
They're awesome in the sense that, like, if it's done well and with the right process and it's like solventless, you are creating like the cleanest consumption of plant possible, in a sense, like, because plant matter, it actually has, you're much further away from the pesticides than you would be with the distillate. So the process of making distillate is also so different from vendor to vendor, and this is where like the black market really fucks you up, because I've gone out and said this, because most people don't know that most of your cartridges are made with weed that's going bad, that you're buying on the streets. It's how growers and people in this business stretch to make oil out of
there's some bud rot, or it's starting to mold.
It's got mold coming in, all the shake they will mix into it to make the oil, and then they'll kind of color code in a sense to make it look nicer than it is. Like, this is really happening. So you got to be extra careful if you're someone that is consuming concentrates, because how those are made is incredibly important. And the best bet is to just buy bud, get a rosin press, and just fucking press that shit down into live rosin for yourself, and just be done with it. If you want to do concentrates, get yourself a nice coil, or use a dryer vaporizer that goes to high temperatures, and you're done. Like, you don't need to go buy it from someone else that you can't trust. It's just things that I feel like tiny little details that are like sort of connoisseurish needs to become like sort of the common understanding. I feel
normality. Yeah, I can see it. The problem is, you've got barriers to entry there. Buying a rosin press pretty pricey to get something of quality. It really comes down to it often comes back to money. If you have the money, you can afford the quality.
And that's right. You're right. And that's the point I'm trying to make too. Is like you're better off not buying the cheap shit because you think that that's like what you should get. Like you deserve good stuff and buy less of it. If you can't afford as much of it. But please, like, remember that, like, what are we doing all this for? Like, it's your body. This is everything. This is what you like. If you've gotten high, don't you know like how beautiful life is and like what you are here for? Like you've been gifted this fucking life. Like treat yourself that way. Why do you not understand? Like some of it blows my mind as to like how shallow the thought process of stoners are collectively on the internet. Not one single person. I'm sure there's brilliant people out there, but in a collective way, like the wave of comments from like our stoner culture is just stupid. They're fucking dumb.
100%. Do you know what like really shits me with the stoner culture? It's like they're always looking for a fight. They're trying to prove you wrong in anything you've said. Like they'll take those 3 seconds out of 1 hour and be like, no, absolutely nothing because you got that one fact wrong. And it's like, bro, did you not listen to everything else I said?
No, they don't. That's part of what it is. It's like we live in this selective hearing, bite-sized content, and they're high, which means most of them are not really paying full attention anyway. And whatever triggered them, whatever challenges their belief the most is the thing that sticks and kind of irks that sort of knee-jerk comment. I've gotten so many negative comments I can't even tell you. Sometimes it really hurts, but at the same time I'm working through it. And I have to say, it's like every time I get someone irritated like that, I almost feel like I did them a service. I don't know. It's just me. I feel like
I get that.
I'm glad that I made you disagree, like found something that you disagree with, because now you're going to think a little bit more
about it. Yeah. I go with the Gary V philosophy of if someone really goes after me like that, it means they're hurting. Like something that I've said has triggered them a little bit. And, there's a state of suffering there where they felt like they needed to lash out. So I just deploy a lot of compassion and empathy and just be like, I've been there. Like I used to play a lot of online games. Like I'm a dude that used to be the World of Warcraft guy, Counter-Strike, I played all of it and I still play here and there. I'm not a big player anymore because I have a fucking business to run and I've turned my business into my game. Right. I managed to somehow get my head around the idea of if I just treat this as a video game, I'll probably do pretty well because I'm pretty good at games. But what I notice now when I come back to games, I play Dota. I don't know if you've ever played Dota or like a MOBA. No, very competitive esports scene. Probably one of the most competitive out of any game you could ever play. Really, really, people who play it are obsessive. They want to be good. They want to play. You're playing to win. You're playing to have fun. You play to win. Now, I play for fun. I play to win as well. I'm super competitive. I want that win. But when you play with these people and like me now coming as I just turned 30 last year and I'm a stoner and you play these games, lots of stoners there, but fuck, people get so angry and so mad because you made that one fucking mistake, and they'll just harp on about it and they'll go nuts and there's just shit talking. And sometimes, they'll use their voice chat and you hear them and you're like, yeah, it sounds like about an 18 to 24-year-old. They're probably very lost in life. And you can just see that anger and that resentment. They haven't confronted those sides of themselves yet. They just don't see who they are, and somewhere along the way, I don't know when it happened for me, something switched where I'm like, oh, hang on, I actually can rise above my own emotions and not respond that way. I have a choice there. It's my choice to kind of enact that feeling and response. So now I used to be a huge troll, and for the better part, I still kind of am. I love to do a little troll just to kind of irk someone, just to kind of get them to question their existence. It's fun.
It's fun. It's hard not to. Right? I mean, I get the whole like be kind on the internet thing that Gary talks about, but sometimes I'm gonna fucking slap these people in the face.
But do you know, I figured out my new form of trolling. It's being kind, right? So what I do is like, bro, are you all right? Have you talked to someone today? Do you need an ear? So I play into the idea that I'm going to support them, and I will if they actually come out. I will. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I would too if they were like, a lot of times when I get a really lengthy like negative comment, I'm like, I wish I could talk to you. I think we would agree more than disagree.
100%. So Now my strategy with these people that are angry at me, I'm like, man, I think you should maybe consider getting some help. There's probably a few things in your childhood that you just haven't resolved yet. Maybe talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, just have a little think on that. Why are you this angry at this moment at me?
Yeah. And I think part of that also has to say that you and I could probably say sitting here now, I'm 31, you're 30. I feel like I started weed later in life, but I was a very developed individual before I got into weed. I think that's important to say.
I think that is important.
It's a big difference between a child getting into any kind of drugs and a grown man. I'm not saying it's right or wrong either way. It's really fucked up to just do drugs in general, maybe. I don't know, but I don't think it's all bad, from my experience. And I feel that when I was getting into weed, it was because of a consequence or a situation in my life where I was trying to find stress relief. But at the same time, I had already, I was already making good money. I was in great health for the most part, except for the stress, which was making my health go down. And I didn't really look at it more closely than I, do now, where I realized that, I could actually do meditation that would have helped me. I already knew about healthy eating from the bodybuilding days and, the value of sleep and nutrition and hydration and all that. But I have this thing called the 5 pillars, and I didn't have the 5th pillar, which is meditation. So the 5 pillars are exercise, nutrition, hydration, sleep, and meditation. And meditation is the one that actually, whatever that means to you, it doesn't have to be anything religious, but the act of understanding that your breath can change your state and it can be a guide for you to observe your thoughts and your emotions and be less affected by them is some of the most powerful wisdom that exists in mankind. I learned that after I found myself, coping with life the normal way, and then through a lot of stress, and then finding weed to help with that, and then taking that to the extreme. That's when I've kind of picked up on this, and that's why I'm sharing it now. It's I was able to dig myself in a hole through life circumstances and through I guess weed abuse. I wouldn't blame everything that happened because of weed, but it accelerated my demise, you could say. But that's because and I had a good foundation. That's why I was able to still say in that lowest low that I'm going to work towards making myself a better person. That's why I now call my YouTube and group Better Yourself. It's you can, you just got to know some of the basics, like those 5 pillars, and you really can. It's something that I feel the young user is completely unaware of because they don't know how to process their emotions well. They haven't made anything of themselves yet. They don't have stability financially, spiritually, emotionally, maybe even with relationships. It's really weed becomes that kind of girlfriend, they call Mary Jane, right? That's your best friend now. It's your girlfriend. You're just married to that fucking plant, because every time you feel an emotion that you don't want to feel, you can get high and then dance around with a different emotion. You can be on that carousel, but that's what it is. You're not going to feel new emotions every time you get high. Over time, you're going to run out and you're going to cycle the same bullshit. And the shit that you're avoiding that is causing you pain in your natural life is going to continue to come up in your high life. If it hasn't happened to you yet and you're abusing weed and you are, wait, it will happen. It's just a matter of time, And I think that is the part where I feel it just needs to be said that your state affects a lot more of what this plant will do to you than anything else.
Yeah.
So I don't know, little rant.
No, I get that. In February, I decided I was going to smoke less weed because in January, I was smoking quite a lot of weed throughout the day, which is not typical for me. I'm generally a nighttime user. I use it to wind down and reflect on the day.
I think that's the best way.
I think that's 100% the best way, unless you've got, some kind of medical condition and, you really need it for that pain relief or something that really calms you down. We're talking real issues that are not just your mental kind of state. Physical pain, nerve damage, there's a whole thing, you might have multiple scoliosis. There's all that sort of stuff. But what I was doing was I was masking a lot of pain throughout the day because I was going through some pretty big changes within my business and it was just so fucking stressful. And there was a lot of hurt there. And I'm someone who can operate pretty well stoned. I can work on my business as stone. Like it's not ideal always, but most of the time it's good. The only times I really don't like it is when I have to have client calls, sales calls, really one-on-one. But if it's me working on background shit, I can be stoned. Like as long as I'm not completely ripped, I'm good. But the thing is, I was smoking mostly through this thing, the Vistrato. This thing, it only takes a 0.1 gram. So I don't feel guilty. It's like I'm only having a small dose. But what I was doing, and it took a little while, maybe a couple of weeks for me to realize, it's like every time I'm doing a task that kind of hurts because I had an employee leave, right? I'd hit that thing because I'm like, fuck, I hate this. Like it's just how things had transpired. It's just, an uncomfortable feeling. And I'm like, fuck, I just keep masking that fucking feeling. Yeah. So in February, I was like, you know what? I'm going to not smoke weed for the month. I didn't succeed at all. I'll say that straight away. I went about 5 days before I had a first toke, and it was about the weekend. And the reason I had the toke was I actually had friends come up from Sydney that I hadn't seen in 2 years, and we actually only know each other because of cannabis. So I'm like, of course I'm going to smoke with these people. And the thing I have to, something I kind of have to give myself leniency in. I talk about weed all day, every day. That's my fucking job. So being able to just go cold turkey, it's very tricky, tough, it's what's around me. So I had to respect that. So what I did, I pretty quickly realized, okay, I'm just not going to smoke on the weeknights. I'm going to make that where I'm clean and sober, see how I'm feeling, let myself reset a little bit, and, reevaluate at the end of the month. Because I just realized it's just not going to happen. There's too much. I don't know. I can do it. I know I could, but I'd have to just change other parts of my life that I couldn't change. So that made it just tricky. But it let me reflect on myself. It let me reflect on my weed usage. It let me see, why I was using it, where I was using it, because I now had to feel that pain a little more. I was still taking CBD just to keep kind of my baseline pretty calm. I think it's probably a good idea if you're someone who's smoked for a really long time and you want to stop, maybe grab some CBD first, wean yourself down, because it can be pretty nasty. But what was interesting, I realized there's two things I realized, two really big ones that made me go, fuck, that's probably pretty bad. I realized since 2017, since I returned from Amsterdam, I've probably smoked weed every single day till 2023. Probably, in the evenings typically. Maybe there was a day or two missed here and there, probably because it wasn't around. But fuck, it almost guaranteed consistent nightly use. And I'm like, okay, it's probably not for the best. I can definitely have that break here and there, absolutely. So I had that realization. And now that game I was mentioning before, Dota, I was playing, and I'm like, because I was trying to figure out what to do with myself when I was sober. In the evening, I was so jittery, I was restless. I'm fucking bored. What do I do with myself? And it's do the things you normally would do or whatever. I figured out.
Well, let's stay on that for a second though. About being bored and then wanting to use weed. I think that's a huge reason why me and everybody else wants to get high, is because we are bored and we want to get high. If you've smoked weed, I'm willing to bet 9 out of 10 times you want to get high because you're bored and you don't want to do something that you should be doing. And here's the thing: when you get high, it doesn't mean you're not bored, because most of the times you'll get high and then
you're bored, but you're enjoying yourself.
But you're enjoying your own thoughts now, and you're a little less worried about your ability to feel that boredom. And that's all that happened. Fundamentally, nothing changed. I think it's super important to call this out, because it's I do agree with not overjudging yourself. You said you were going to take a break and you couldn't do it. It was hard for you. It's fine. It can be challenging. If someone on the internet's like, oh, that's you being, a pussy and weak-minded, fuck them. If it's hard for you, it's hard for you. So I like the idea of, weaning yourself down. That's smart. But I also like the idea of someone challenging themselves to do some shit that they haven't fucking done before. And realizing that you actually have that power right now, if you decided to say, fuck it, I'm not smoking anymore, and just see what the fuck happens. And really see what happens and push yourself as far as you can. You will find something about yourself. I bet you that was revelatory, or just huge insights that you're going to get about yourself if you do that process. And then you could go back. You can always fucking go back to weed. It's not going anywhere.
It.
You can always go back to being how fucking stupid you were with it before. It's okay.
Yep, that's it. But what the other little realization that I had, I was playing Dota and I'm like, fuck, I've never played this game sober. Like
Damn.
I that's a game I've spent about maybe 3,500 hours on over the course of almost 10 years. I haven't played it sober. And I was just like, that's fucked. Like that's such a fucked feeling that like sat with me. I'm like, how is it that I'm enjoying this game if I have to be high to enjoy it? And so I had to question, do I enjoy the game as much when I'm not high? And the answer was yeah, but a little less. Definitely a little less. I still appreciated it for everything it was, but I just started to realize, hang on, there's other things that I do enjoy doing more. For me, a big one's guitar. I absolutely love playing guitar. I picked that up in my 20s, and I would say to this day, it's probably one of the most rewarding things I think I've ever done. That's
music is fantastic. I love to listen to like Alan Watson to get high and like or listen to music or play music. I'm a drummer. I would like play music. I love to do creative things when I get high. I would say over the years, one of the best pieces of advice as a fellow like cannabis lover is try not to do complicated, annoying things when you're high. Like try to really enjoy it and enjoy that state change. Enjoy that state change for like something beautiful. Don't try to be like, I'm gonna use this to get everything done, to like go to school. Like why you're like dampening yourself, and 100%. you think you're actually getting something out of it. Like and I can say that because I've done it too, so I know how easy it is, especially if you have it all around you. Like one of the new hacks, or like I've been talking about this for a while, so it's not really new for me, but I think it's important to not have your weed shit all around you. Like I think it's very difficult for young people. They always have their shit all around. I know, but you have it all around you. But I think that's genuinely a bad idea, because you're creating all these triggers for yourself that every time you see it, you have to battle that thought of should I get high? If you understand that you want to be more self-aware, then one of the things you need to do is put it away and actually make it a process for yourself to like go and get it. Like I disassemble all my shit once I'm done. I put it away. Like I'll like put it away in the drawers and the containers and shit. Like, and then if I have to do it again, then I gotta like get through the. Sometimes I'll be sitting there, I'm like, I want to get high. Like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go to bed. Like, you know, like that nighttime when it's like you've already been high and you're like about to go to bed. Like, I should take another hit before I go to bed. And like, I swear to God, because I put shit away 9 out of 10 times now, I'm just like,
just won't. It's a little harder now that we've got vaporizers, the dry herb. It's made the accessibility so easy. I used to. I see you
got the volcano back there, boy. That thing, you could turn that thing on and leave it on day.
I've got a Coroma there. That thing is even better than a volcano. It plugs on top of a bong. It's a ball vape. It plugs on top. It's got.
What I did is I saw you have that. I was doing what you were doing with that new device you just showed with the Mighty or the Crafty.
You put it on it. Yeah, I've got the water pipe. It's good, bro. It's so good.
It's so good. I don't think there's any better way to vaporize than that.
So when I was doing the break in February, I realized that I had to actually put things away. So I actually did. I cleaned up the room, moved things away. And then after February, I actually assembled a much bigger weed sign.
Fuck it. Go the other side.
I just went heavier on it. But that was partly because I started wanting to do more YouTube videos. That was part of the thing. And I'm like, I want to have a cool background. And just because of like the space that I'm in and the people I work with, that's all good. I've very much learned, that self-restraint on cannabis. I've worked on that for quite a few years. So I'm not too bad. I often now, when I grab the vape, if it's through the day, I'm like, why am I having this? That's the first question I ask. And then
the why question is
truly be like, no, this is actually going to help me here, I'll do it. Yesterday, this is a bit sad, to be honest. It was about, 3:00. My mum calls and she tells me a family friend of ours has passed away. And I'm like, fuck.
Sorry.
And, someone I only see maybe once a year around Christmas time and that sort of thing, but he has good memories within my childhood. And I talked to my mum and I'm like, that's sad. And I'm like, I'm pretty autistic with my feelings. I often don't know what I'm feeling a lot of the time until a little later. I need to feel that. And weed actually helps me so much understand what I'm actually feeling. That's probably why I consume cannabis nightly, is because I want to know what I felt throughout the day. Sometimes I just can't. And I get off the phone and I just start going, fuck. And I just start crying. And, I really didn't expect to have that reaction. But I felt through it. I felt through those emotions and it was, I came to, and then I got a little high to kind of help feel loosen it and not feel as much, but feel it still. Because I find weed just magnifies your emotions and your feelings even more so.
Yes, 100%.
But at the same time, it gives you comfort of those feelings. It lets you feel them without almost being crippled. I don't know how else to put it. Some feelings can be so heavy that you're just crippled and you're almost convulsing, shaking, panic attack, whatever. But I got a little high, and then all these fucking memories of my childhood of like that, the family friend came to me and all the things I loved about him. And then I realized, holy shit, he was actually a bit of a role model to me. He was one of the first people I knew that was in business. And, there's all these things, and I probably would have gotten there without weed, don't get me wrong, but weed made it just so apparent, and it made me come to like a spiritual connection with his death. I was just like, what the fuck? And I didn't even really equate it to weed, but reflecting on it after, I was like, the weed opened up all of those neuro pathways to everything that I had known about the guy. And I don't know, like, is that a negative use of cannabis or a positive use? Who's to say?
Here,
someone would say I'm masking emotion. Others would say I'm embracing it.
I think that's I think that's the point. It's like, we can sit here and talk about weed and how great it is all day. I think anybody that smokes weed and continues to do it knows that it's fucking great. So that's why that conversation is kind of a dead end, because it is fantastic. But this is where I feel like we're balancing out by talking about, using it too much, where it loses that touch, where you get high and you're not even getting high. You're like low to medium, and you have to then like take bigger hits, go on to concentrates. Dude, like, it's like, where do you
concentrates are so dangerous to me. Like, if I had, because here it's hard to get dabs, right? You have to know someone with a press, or someone, blah blah blah. But when you start having them, man, flower does fucking nothing.
Does nothing. Yeah. How terrible. It sucks.
It's like, why would I ever do that to myself? Like, I want to be able to still enjoy things. But
and with the oils, it's hard. Like with vape pens and stuff, I think it's super hard. Like, this is a real pen, not a vape pen. But just for demonstration, when you have one right there, like if I have one on my desk, I'm for sure gonna want to hit it. That's why I don't keep it on my desk. Like, for me personally, like, I know that I'm trying to live a more balanced life, and for me, I don't want to be high all the time or even have that temptation. So I remove it for myself. But with a vape pen and a phone, the action of like scrolling and hitting a vape pen like you think it's a joint is so common. And if the vape pen doesn't get you high anymore because you've been puffing on it like crazy, you really have a serious problem at hand, and you just don't realize it. Or you do realize it, but then your question to me is like, well, what
I'll just get 2 pens.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's not really the path. The path is to actually cut it down or take a huge break from that and let your tolerance come down a lot. And in that time, like, really embrace the suffering, because you kind of need to. So so that that like, this is not how you're supposed to use this plant. I don't know, man. Like, I really feel for the culture and especially the young kids who are wanting to get into weed or are already in it and find themselves in this like sort of,
they're just in a loop, very loopy. Yeah. See, like, I started smoking weed a little earlier than you did, but I didn't start till after school. I was about 19 or so. So I was at university. And I don't really know why I started smoking weed. I had a few friends that did, and it seemed interesting. I had experiences of, I used to have a lot of World of Warcraft guild mates that used to smoke weed while we played. That helped normalize it. They were Americans, actually. They used to play up late. They were army dudes or ex-army dudes. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I started to have it around me, and I spent I probably spent a good 100, 200 hours researching weed before I smoked it. Like, I wanted to understand everything about it. Like,
that's good.
Nerd, bro. Like, it's,
I
learned more about cannabis at university than I did my IT degree, because you know how you get access to all the journal publications and stuff like that, where you can read.
You were searching all the weed shit.
I was researching all the weed shit, and that was way more interesting to me. Like,
I bet.
I've been programming since I was fucking 10 years old. Like, I've known how to build a website since I was about 10, 11 years old.
That's awesome.
Which is, good part of my character trait. It's I always learned skills when I was younger, but I went definitely through a phase at university where I was more interested in cannabis and consuming it than I was my own studies.
I think everybody gets into the spell, dude. I think weed is just so mesmerizing that
it's that girlfriend, you know.
Yeah, just about everybody I know has gotten that like loves weed has gotten down that path. Like just about everybody I know. I hardly know anyone who hasn't, which is why I feel like it feels like it's a taboo subject, but it's like no, it's actually very common real. What we're talking about. Like it's actually it's more common than you would think, and that's what's really great about I think just us being able to do this today. First,
just a shared experience.
Yeah, like we're sitting across literally on the opposite side of the world, and we can share that experience. So, like, obviously, there's a lot of middle ground where people have different,
they just had it here and there, and they never got
versions.
Absorbed,
but for the most part, what we're talking about is more common than not. I would say to like help someone actually like moderate their weed use. Tracking your consumption is huge. I already talked about like, hiding or putting your stuff away after you're done. That's huge. And just the first thing ever is like asking the why. Like, what are we trying to do here? Even if it's like, I'm just trying to get
here to enjoy myself.
Watch the show.
That's fine.
I think the thought of doing that intention setting is so important because that tells you what story you're crafting in that moment for yourself. Yep. And I think that is really, really important for all of us because we need to be aligned with what we're doing and why.
Yeah.
And if you ever find yourself in an anxiety or a panic attack or some sort of weird like situation mentally and you're feeling it in your body, it's because you have some misalignment, like your reality is not matching what you think in your head. And I think when you're using mind-altering substances and chemicals, you can't take it lightly, and you definitely should not be using weed like cigarettes or something that you can just do casually. I think that's a huge waste of this like beautiful plant that we have. And last would be like definitely try to get from a place where you are you're aware of where it's coming from, what it's made of. Ask the questions like we talked about. What kind of effects am I after? Why do I consume it? At least know that for yourself, and then ask about what kind of effects this product has and why. And learn. Like I don't know. I feel like those are kind of covering the bases. Would you add anything to that?
I think it's pretty important for the younger people to have interests outside of cannabis. I think that's something 100%. That I've noticed. I've seen people that I grew up with effectively not gain enough interest in just something else. My interest, like I've made my life about cannabis, right? But I have heaps of deep interest originally it was programming and web development. And then I got super interested in marketing. And from that, I kind of got, I've always been interested in business, but I only really started to learn business after I learned those two skills. And that let me do what I wanted. But the thing is, those skills have allowed me to create my life in cannabis. People are like, how do I get in the cannabis industry in Australia? Because it's still quite new and emerging. Yeah. Like, there's all these stoners coming out and they're like, I want to work in this space and this and this and this. It's like, what can you do?
What are your skills?
Yeah, okay, you can grow weed, but like, have you got a degree for it so you can actually prove that you can grow good weed? Like, where are your skill sets that you can provide to the plant? Like, I put a call out the other day looking for writers, and I had one guy go, "Oh yeah, I can help you write, bro," and it was like hardly written correctly, and I'm like, "Great application, you've definitely sold me on you." And
you're better off just using ChatGPT, dude.
100%. And I had someone go, I can use ChatGPT. And I'm like, fucking, so can I. There's a reason I'm looking for someone that understands written content and has actually put in the effort to learn that. I don't want to work with someone that's just like, I can like maybe figure it out. I've written a paragraph in my life before. That's not fucking useful.
I think you're making a good point. I recently was contemplating this a lot because, for the last couple of years after like we really blew up on TikTok, like I had multiple accounts get banned because it was always a flagged topic, which was silly because I was not promoting it. I was not even like showing it. It's hilarious.
That's how it is.
What would get you banned? So, but like we got like up to 18 million views on TikTok, and that's pretty good for like someone that just started. But it started to really get me down this rabbit hole of like, well, I'm moving away from being a full-time stoner to like a semi-part-time stoner. But if I'm talking about it all the time, then it is still on my mind, and I'm still consuming, obviously my own content as being published and, posting it and interacting.
It makes it harder to get away from.
It makes it harder to get away. And so I've had to come to terms with that as well. And I think right now I'm still figuring that out in this process. But one of the things I'm definitely trying to do is really kind of go back to my grassroots. Why do I do what I do? Like I told you in the beginning, it's like I was never like about only weed. I was always about like mental health and like well-being and physical health. Like those are my basic pillars. And the 5 pillars that I talk about is what I stand for, because that's how I feel like I've lived a good life. And I think those can help you just continue to be better in life. So how do I get myself to like really talk about those more and not be worried about kind of like what, Gary would tell you, like, don't be focused on just making content that gets the views. Talk about the things you want to talk about.
Yeah.
And 100%. I've been really working on that more and more is like, I still get fucking 10, 20 views on some of the full length YouTube videos that we've spent like 30 hours to edit. It doesn't matter though, because it's like, I know it's good.
It'll be there. You put it out.
It's helpful. It will eventually come back, but it's like really, having the interest outside of weed is so important. Like you said the most beautiful point. Like I want to say thank you for bringing that one up, because I really don't think that, just getting high is going to get you anywhere in life. You really need to have some skills that you can prove out and build your confidence up by doing shit and having like done things, like put it out, like let's show your work. Like if you're going to talk shit, show your work. Let's see what you can do, and then, maybe you could really get really far in life and still use weed. I think it's not mutually exclusive. Successful people do get high, but successful people don't get high and not do shit. That's the thing. I always hate this comparison of like, well, what about Snoop Dogg? What about Wiz Khalifa? You are not sitting like them making music, bro, and like crushing it in everything they do. You just are focusing on the one thing you have in common with them, with it being
where's all the other things that
where are all the other things, my guy? Like you
character traits.
And that's the part where I feel like, if you are planning to, make something of yourself, please find interest outside of weed, and if it scares you, then good. Like that's what you should do. If something scares you, you should definitely go and try.
Probably push towards it. That's it. I definitely the interest-based stuff. I think it's an important, you just need to be good at something, for fuck's sake. Like be good at something.
One thing
that provides some sort of value to people. If you can solve that, I'm pretty sure you'll have a very successful life. You could probably smoke all the weed you want, as long as you know how to provide value to people. And ideally you find a way to do it, doing something you actually enjoy doing. If you find that enjoyment of, oh shit, this really satisfies me, you're just going to win. Like there's no other way. Like for me, I run my business. I have my clients. How rewarding it is when you hear clients go, fuck yeah, bro, I love you and your team. Thank you for putting that together for me. Right. It's just, there's a reward there. It's an exchange because I know I've provided a piece of value to someone and they're satisfied with it. I'm content. I can fucking do anything else for the rest of the day and I'm probably happy, like.
Yes. I love this. I had somebody on one of my podcasts say this. It's like, use weed to feel even better. Don't use it to feel better.
Feel better. Yeah. 100%.
Like you should feel better through your natural like circumstances in life by you working towards them, but don't use weed only to feel better because it's going to quickly just spiral you into the negative direction. It's not the right way.
When you're talking about your 5 pillars, I related to a lot of that. I get that. For me, the physical health is where I struggle. That's always been my struggle since I was a child. Working on that.
Well, let's break it down. I want to help you.
You want to help me?
Yeah, I want to help you with that. What is the problem? Why can't you go for a 30-minute walk a day?
Honestly, I get zoned in on work quite often. And
what time do you wake up?
7.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
Poo, pee, shower, the usual things. And then after, honestly, I play chess. You
should stop playing chess and go for a fucking walk.
You
should play chess on your phone that while you're taking a walk.
Oh, that's a tricky one.
That?
Might get hit by a car, but I get your premise.
But, and maybe you need
that's
to
what I've enacted
voice
this year.
Text a chess move like, queen to E5. I don't know. Fucking...
No, that's what I've started doing this year. I've started putting in that and, some days we don't do it. Most days we do. So I've had very good progress this year. It's been a very good growth year for me. So I'm just continuing on that. I'm a healthy eater. It's really bizarre. People would assume that I don't eat good natural foods and fast food and that sort of shit. No. I'm a very clean eater. I just eat sometimes in excess. That was always my issue. It's like the binge eating. And see, I've noticed it's between two things. It's either cannabis or it's
I'll tell you this.
Right?
I'll tell you this.
That's the emotional response.
Hold on. I don't want to hear all that bullshit. Listen to this. I'll tell you this. Whatever the fuck you're doing right now in life, you will be better at it if you took care of your physical health.
100%. And I agree with that completely.
So you should definitely go for that morning walk tomorrow and tell me about it.
I can do that.
But really, man, I feel like you're going to get much more out of yourself if you can be more active. I love that you're trying to work hard and hustle, but the money is not what it's about. It's about your that's not success. It's your health. I mean, if you don't have your health, you're not successful. That's it. You know, I feel like that's what always clicks it back for me whenever I feel off of my routine, whenever I don't like go to the gym or like don't do even what I'm telling you. But ultimately it always comes back to like, I feel a lot better and more balanced out when I do that. And those 5 pillars, if you do those as many days as possible, you will never have a fucking mental health issue. Like find me any human being alive who does those 5 things every single day and has a bad quality of life, and I'll give you a fucking $1 million.
I don't know. I question that because, for example, let's like, you're familiar with Linkin Park?
The band?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chester Bennington offed himself, poor mental health. Where do you think he would have been misaligned on those 5 pillars?
I don't know if he was doing any of those. I don't know the guy.
Yeah, I don't either. But like, you know, you're talking someone with like high celebrity status. He has access to all the resources that he could use. Doesn't
mean anything. Resources, we all have resources at our fingertips. His action is what makes the difference.
I suppose.
I don't know what he was doing with himself.
But where those things would be, I would be like, I would love to know where that misalignment would be, because, you know, it's one thing to say, you know, you do all of those things and you'll be fine. I think I don't know if that's true because of the mental imbalances people could have, you know. Just
so do you understand that exercise actually releases, you know, chemicals in your brain that counter the stress hormones and counter like all the anxiety hormones and things like cortisol and stuff, right? They actually counter that. Exercise does.
Yeah.
Scientifically proven.
No, 100%.
Nutrition. All those things are natural remedies for you to balance out your system. And I'm saying if you do those things and you can go and look, these are 5 things that I've said. There's a basic level, right? There's levels to it. And then there's like medium and intermediate, advanced levels. Like there's each one of these verticals can go so far. Okay. And I think if you were to pursue them to some depth, you will only become a better person and you will live a much better life.
Completely
agree with that. Be a lot less stress. That's where I'm going. So that's where I come from. Like, I think for people that are like, let's say on medication or they have hormonal imbalances, they have chemical, all that stuff is there. I'm not discounting that. If you have to take medication for that and see physicians, all that is there. I'm just saying, don't replace that. I'm saying add these 5 things to your life and just watch what happens, because these are the natural things that were part of, and when I say exercise, I'm not saying go to the gym. You know, I'm not saying that at all. Find what it is for you, right? Move your body, because that's motion creates emotion. Like you move your body, you feel emotions. Like that's science. You know, you drink enough water in the day, your body's made up of mostly water. All the things are working, flushing out systems are, you know, it's like everything's working well. That clears out toxins from your system. You're eating well, you're putting good nutrients in, that affect you are what you eat, literally the saying goes, right? That is affecting everything in your system. And sleep, it's the only time your mind is like actually able to repair itself. Your body's able to repair itself, you know, metabolize. It's important as fuck.
Quick one on sleep that you've mentioned there.
Yeah.
I think that's something that stoners probably need to get a little bit more clarity around, because cannabis definitely impacts our sleep in terms of REM cycles and things like that.
I've seen that.
One of the things that I have found is probably the best way for sleep is don't have weed probably an hour or 2 before you go to sleep. It actually will, because that's going to fuck up your REM cycles. That's where the really bad damage occurs. But if you can have it a bit before, so you can easily drift off into that kind of sedated, sleepy high.
Yeah, I like that. I think a lot of times, almost every time, if I were to take a hit before I go to sleep, I'll lay down in bed and just be like in my head.
Yeah, you get into that meditative spot and you're just like, I love just exploring my mind and my own thoughts.
Yeah, and then you can't sleep. So I like the idea of like doing it a little bit earlier, and then on the come down when you're feeling tired and groggy, instead of going and getting out to be high again, just go lay down. You will pass out. And
100%.
I've seen the research around like it affecting your REM sleep cycle. I'm sure that is there as a negative, but I don't know enough from my personal experience to say that like it has negatively affected my life yet. My sleep cycle has been fucked for the last 9 months since I have a newborn. So it's like, if I'm like falling asleep for 3 hours in a row, I'm happy as fuck.
You're pretty grateful.
So I'm pretty grateful on that front. But yeah, like I think with sleep, it's super important because if you don't get good sleep, it affects everything. Then the next day you're drinking more caffeine, you're smoking more weed or whatever. You're just trying to like
you're trying to get back to homeostasis.
Yeah, and then you never do. You almost keep going more and more on the negative. And then like, if you like the counterproductive thing is like when you're feeling stressed and like a 5-minute meditation is going to help you, you don't do it when you know that you need to do it. And all the days that fucking you're doing well, where you have nothing to do, you're like, oh, I got my meditation. Oh, it's just like, that's fantastic. But you got to know to use your tools when you need them. That's the whole point of the tools. Right. And I make it like, just do it poorly is kind of where my starting point is. Like, don't try to become like, now I'm going to fucking go be David Goggins, or I'm going to like go and, run a half marathon. Like, that's not the point. I'm not trying to tell you to get rich in 90 days or get ripped abs in a week. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, what are your pillars? They're called pillars. What are your foundations? How well are those anchored to you? And you can decide what they mean for you. But I think focusing on these 5 things, you just can't go wrong. I will defend that forever, but I just don't know anybody that
100%
genuinely does that and has a bad life.
With the meditation pillar, I was thinking about this a little earlier. Where do you see cannabis use align with meditation?
I mean, it's a funny topic because like anybody that's gotten high knows that you get into a meditative state whether you want to or not. Whether you have labeled that as a meditative state or not, that is probably the real question. And I think if anyone can, get a little high and then like put on an Alan Watts tape or like listen to, a spiritual teacher on YouTube, like they're super synergistic. I think I discovered for the first time in my life when I meditated, I was high as fuck. I was watching a spiritual teacher give like a 3-hour talk. It's called a satsang. And it's where they just basically talk about like the truth in a sense. Like they try to get you to see where your position is as you're watching awareness. And you do this for like 3.5 hours, dude. And I was just high through the whole thing. And that was my first experience of like truly experiencing that meditative state. And after that, I was like, oh, something clicked.
Yeah.
Like I need to, I could do this anytime. I don't need weed for it. I don't need anything for this. I have this space available to access within me at all moments in time.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things where like, it's a shift. That's all I want. I don't give a shit what you do for meditation. I don't care if you like, don't like sit down in a position. Like, it's not about that. It's not about no position or like, it's not about any one thing. It's just the act of doing it and then letting it like naturally happen. Like, I think one of the things that I'll leave you with, because I do got to balance, is it is about developing your intuition, and weed should make you see, hopefully, that you have a lot of voices in your head and most of them are bullshit, but one of them is your intuition. And if you can get in touch with what that is for you through meditation, through like quietening your mind a bit, just watching what's happening, not reacting, you will really start to develop a newfound like love for your life and with everything you do, and just see how that transforms you. You might not need as much weed. You might not need to do that, watch so much porn. You might not need to eat so much shit. Things could change for you that you don't think are possible for you to change now, if you can tap into your like inner wisdom, your inner guidance. And I think that's what weed really did for me. It helped me see that through practices, through the meditations that I learned about, just going into the rabbit hole of philosophy and learning about shit.
I like that a lot. I think that's good. But my question there is, let's say you're in that high state, you pick up on that intuition, right? You've captured it and you're almost inspired by it. And you're like, I know that this is what I need to do. But the high still exists and you kind of you still fumble in the thought. You almost get into imagination land of that thought.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Now, bringing it back to reality to implement that, what are your suggestions to take that intuition, that thought you've had, and pull it and actually put it into practice, or align yourself to it?
Couple of things.
Often you just forget, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely. I was just gonna say that. A couple of things that are really important to remember when you're high is that your memory is shit and you're gonna forget. And what you feel now is gonna go away. So one of the best things you could do is turn on the voice memos on your phone and just talk to yourself out loud if you can do that. Or have a piece of paper around, a notebook. I always have that. I always write, and I'm a fast typer, so I'll have my notes app open and I can type out to myself. It's okay for it to be a mental dump, as long as you decide after the fact, the next day or whatever, to kind of go back and look at it, right? This is one of the best ways, is like, capture that insight, whatever it is that you've gotten in that other state, like capture it and then go back to it. And definitely, if you don't take any action from it, I can guarantee you it's going to either come back and bite you and nag you, or it's going to eat you away, or it was just nothing. It was false, right? Like if it doesn't come back and it doesn't seem like it's something you should be doing, then it was just part of the high. Like, that's okay. Let it go. Don't beat yourself up for it, because you're going to have 1,000 more ideas. And I think that's one of the best things about weed, is that you can actually get a lot of crazy ideas. But then when you get down from it, you have to then see, okay, was that really a good idea?
It was a good idea.
Yeah. Because I'm sure we've had some dumb ideas that we thought were really good high.
Those business ideas that hit you, you're like, I'm going to be a millionaire, like billionaire. Like I'm
You're like, this, bro, that's been thought of already. You're not the first one. Well, shit.
Yeah.
Yusuf,
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, I'm so sorry we had to end this. I would love to do this again with you. We were just getting at the tail end of kind of dissecting the conversation. So I'd love to do this again. I just want to say thank you for having me on this today. And for those that are listening, I really hope this dialogue helped open up something in you that you'll just go run with and just try to be a little bit different than how you were. This is so good. To just have this forum to share these ideas. So thank you for having me.
Be better, stoner.
Yeah, be a better stoner. For real. Really, better yourself. Just become a better version of you. You don't have to be the same person you've been for a long time. You don't have to be the same kind of stoner. You get to decide what kind of stoner you want to be.
That's it.
Be that stoner. So that's it, man. This is fucking great. I just want to say thanks again.
No, thank you for coming on. I hope the audience has had a good time, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.